Welcome back to Game Warp. I'm Kim, and joined with me as always is my co-host Elwood Jones. How's it going, Elwood?
I'm doing good, Kim. Obviously, as of the time of recording, we've just seen the big update for GTA Online with the Bikers update, something that they've been campaigning for I think about 3 years now, with people like the Banished Breed leading the charge. So there's a lot of happy people in GTA Online. So obviously, there's some much excitement there, but obviously it's exciting times here on the show as well because we have a very special guest today. Do you want to obviously introduce who we have today, Kim?
Yes, today's guest is from Cardboard Utopia. For those who don't know, Cardboard Utopia launched a very successful Kickstarter campaign earlier this year for their JRPG tactical game called Children of Zodiarcs. Exciting mesh of gameplay, to say the least. I had a chance to check them out at DreamHack, and let me tell you, for me, who is a completely non-tactical person, I enjoyed it a lot, and I actually gained a fond interest in like deck building. So I have to thank them for that so much. So let me introduce Jason Kim. Welcome to this show, Jason.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
I guess what we can start with is, can you tell about a little about yourself, your background in gaming, and what is your role at Cardboard Utopia?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I've been a fan of like a lover of video games since I was young. I remember that Final Fantasy, 2 on the Super Nintendo was what really cemented my love for video games. And at an early age, I think I was like 13, I made the decision that I wanted to work in video games. And since then, I geared my high school, all my electives and etc. to do that. And I've been working in the game industry since 2004. So I've been in this for like 12 years now. Started out at A2M, which is now called Behavior. Started out working as a level designer on like licensed titles like Scooby-Doo, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Happy Feet, stuff like that. Great times. And then after 5 years of that, I moved on to Ubisoft Montreal. Yeah, where I worked on, where I was a lead level designer and a lead game designer and team lead and things. Where I worked on games like Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood, Far Cry 3, Rainbow Six Patriots, so what Rainbow Six Siege used to be. And then another title that was, I spent a year on that before I decided to leave and start my own thing. I decided that I wasn't I wasn't in the position that for what I wanted to be, of why I dreamed of being in game development, which was a big part to make JRPGs, and also to be able to make the games that I was passionate about. So in November 2013, that was my last day at Ubisoft Montreal, and I putzed around for like a year, being kind of lazy and crappy, and then I started up Cardboard Utopia in 2014. And been hiring a team of people I knew back from working at Ubisoft and other friends, and then recruiting some new people as well that I'd met for the first time, and really liked them. Thought that their skills were amazing. After a few years of that, here we are. That we have our game in production right now, our Children of Zodiarcs, like you said, and we're just trucking along, trying to finish this game.
Obviously, Cardboard Utopia, that's a fantastic name, we have to say straight off the bat. What was the inspiration for calling the company Cardboard Utopia?
It came from two places. The first point where when I was talking with our writer and trying to figure out a name for this studio, something he threw out was Cardboard Utopia, as a reference for him, it was a reference to the North Korean propaganda village, Kijangdong, I believe it's called. It's a village on the North Korean side, of the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, that is meant to show off like how prosperous the North Korean people are, and like it's got tall buildings, like this gigantic flagpole and everything, uh, but like when upon closer inspection, people noticed that there was no glass in the windows, that there was nothing inside the buildings, that everything was fake. The people they found out that like the people wandering around were soldiers in civilian clothing or the janitorial crew. That it was this fake village meant to look all amazing, but it's just nothing to it. And I just thought that idea was so crazy. This idea of this thing that's supposed to look like a utopia, but is completely without substance. And the reason why, like, not just because that's hilarious, but also because, like, for me, it really reflected why I decided to leave the AAA industry. Another reason why I decided to leave the AAA industry and go indie is like I was just tired of also working in the AAA scene of games that were so much about flash and but not about any actual substance. That they're games that you play for 10, 20 hours, and then when you're done, you're just kind of like, what did I do with my time? Stuff happened around me, but I wasn't involved in it. And again, that whole idea of like this beautiful exterior but nothing inside. Again, like just this fake utopia type of idea. And so I decided to, I thought that was perfect because that perfectly, it just so perfectly encapsulated what I wanted to move away from doing. And so for me, it's like a constant reminder of where my values lie as a game developer, and the relationship of the games that I want to make, and like we at the company make to the gamer themselves. Also, it's I just thought it's hilariously ironic to take that as a mantle. And it may be because I've been living in Montreal too long, and there are way too many hipsters around me. I don't know what it was, but yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how the name was chosen.
That's really smart because when I read the name the first time, I was looking at it and I was like, it's kind of reflective of a lot of people that we talk to who has gone into the indie, decided to build up their own company because of just the bigger AAA companies out there who just like pound out games very fast, but doesn't have the heart that the indie developers do have. And it's really amazing that I'm really excited. Like I'm the indie game person over here, and I'm just in love with indie games all the time. I play them more than AAA games. That's to
Hmm.
say, though. Of course, obviously, I still like the big titles sometimes, but
Yeah.
there's just so much depth to a lot of the games that are in the indie game industry. So, how about we start talking about your game? Because
Sure
there's
thing.
a lot of stuff to talk about because it's a mesh of so many different types of things. So, can you tell us the story of Children of Zodiarcs?
Yeah, sure thing. One of the lessons that I've learned from being in the industry and being a designer is, especially when trying to come up with a new game, when you're coming up with an idea of what that game is going to be, is to focus on what the experience is going to be, not the mechanics. Because because when you focus on mechanics, and like I mean, everyone I know has had this moment of like a new game gets announced and they're like, oh, I had that idea for a punching system or whatever. And that comes about because like I mean, we have a lot of really smart people and really like technical people in the games industry. So like if your main hook is a mechanic, then that's not going to, it's someone else who's going to come up with that. So yeah, where it all started with was in what type of experience I wanted the game to give, because the experience is ultimately the result of the whole thing about the sum of its parts, not an individual mechanic. So like yeah, an experience is harder to copy and replicate or stumble upon than a mechanic is. For me, the experience that I really wanted to draw on was board games, and not so much the physicality of board games of like that physical object or meeples and stuff like that in your hand, but the feelings of the feelings of surprise and anticipation and tension that build up as you're drawing cards to see what you get, or you're like rolling dice to and not really knowing what's going to come out. And so I really wanted to pull on that. Like, yeah, it means that yeah, we took cards and dice from board games, but ultimately that was just the means of capturing the experience that we wanted. So yeah, so it started with that. Like I was playing Arkham Horror, and I loved the mechanics of it, and I loved the experience that came from the mechanics. This whole idea of that randomness is still a factor, but and so a lot of surprise and tension comes from that. But you can also influence that randomness. You can influence that luck of like okay, you need to roll fives to get a success. You need to roll three of them, but you can use weapons to add more dice to your roll, so your chances of rolling a five are way higher now. But there's still that surprise of I might not get fives, but at least I can influence my odds of getting a five. And so I wanted to take that and bring that idea into a game of like where you, the player, have more of a hand in these random luck-based results. So that's where the whole idea of like bringing in cards and dice came from. The tactical part came from. I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy Tactics and the Shining Force, Shining Force 1, 2, and 3. And I really wanted to play a game like that again. But I'm not the biggest fan of Fire Emblem and or Disgaea. I like the games, but just they're not the same as the others. So I was just kind of like, yo, I want to play this game. So I guess I'll just make one. And so yeah, that's how Children of Zodiarcs came about, as a tactical game with a tactical RPG with cards and dice in it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the wonderful things about the independent game scene, and it's certainly something that I've seen more and more. As obviously Kim has corrupted my gaming taste, being when we obviously started, I was more just the AAA gamer and the retro gamer, and obviously the game she sort of passed me, and you see with independent games, it's a lot different than people's perception of what independent games are. They assume that independent games would be like the same as when we look back at like systems like the Amiga and the PC, sort of like freeware games, the sort of cover disc, these very simplistic games. But the games we're actually seeing coming out of the independent scene, when you look at things such as like Journey or Fez or Super Meat Boy, for example, these are very complex and very well developed games that are providing equal, if not better, challenge than a AAA title. And at the same time, because they're independent, they're not having to answer to big bosses, and they have the freedom. And like you said, you want to include elements of dice and card play in your game, and you can certainly have the freedom to do it. And it's something I actually loved when I was seeing the gameplay for Children of Zodiacs, just having these different elements, because it's like, okay, I've seen an RPG game before, but this is adding new elements I'm not familiar with. This is giving me something new, something fresh, and it's always exciting to obviously see that. And at the moment, it seems that if you want something new and exciting, you have to go to the independent scene to get it. Would you say that when it comes to independent games, that the gameplay is always sort of like the primary concern over everything else?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with that. I mean, I feel like a lot of that comes from the fact that usually, like in a lot of indie studios, you either have very little money or very few people, sometimes both. And art is time consuming and it's expensive for resources, people, and money. So you got to kind of work with what you've got. and the things that can be, especially things that can be reused and iterated upon and give variety to during the X number of hours that the game is. And gameplay and level design, like game mechanics and level design, things like that, are a great way to use the same rule set, but just expand upon it and give variations and give a fresh challenge and new content without having to cost like $1 billion. One game that I would kind of think of like as the uh, not really an example of this, but just a reference. You look at Metal Slug, and they do that with their game. It's simple, but it gets built up upon, and it is very challenging. Like enemies are pretty straightforward, but like they also have like a massive amount of art. There's like 10 new enemies with full animations and everything coming in every single level, and that's just not something that's super possible. Like with like a small budget and
Yeah.
a small team, because like the gameplay side totally is, but not that art side. And yeah, so like that's where you get. That's why indie games like heavily, I feel heavily focus on the gameplay aspect of it. I think another factor is when you have a small team. The smaller the team, the more hats a single person wears, and you just can't dedicate that much time to one area just as an individual. So, like with gameplay, you just by tweaking little factors, you can give a very different experience. Like all right, here's a gun, like a side-scrolling shooter, a gun that shoots bullets. Okay, now this one shoots a spread shot, and this one shoots an arcing grenade, and that's kind of fairly simple. I mean, it's definitely not easy, but it's not huge in scope. And so, with one person spending only like one quarter of their work week on gameplay, they can do that and still focus that on those gameplay elements that can be easily extrapolated upon and come out with like a very game mechanic focused game.
Okay.
How about because like I haven't dealt a lot with people who have successful Kickstarter campaigns and that sort of thing, and does that pose kind of a pressure because it kind of poses like a deadline that you needed to do it, or is it a motivation because now you see so many people that praise your game, have high hopes and enthusiasm about your game to come out?
Well, it was definitely like we were really floating high when the results, like when the Kickstarter success became like very apparent. But at some point you fall back to the ground, realize like, oh crap, yeah, there is a lot riding on this. And I mean, our community has been super awesome. They're a lot of them are silent, I mean, there's a lot of people there, so I can't expect them all to talk. But they've been all super accepting of, like, when we announced the delay from August of this year to early next year. They were super understanding, and so it was cool. So I'm not feeling pressure from that, but I'm not really sure what it was. But the Kickstarter was like, it did end up putting like a huge amount of pressure on me that I didn't realize until I started making. I started doing things that I never do. Like, for example, I'm generally a person that's very when talking about information, like I'm very selective and keep a lot of things close to my chest and stuff. Very selective about what it is that I share, and I do think a lot of things on my own terms. But with the Kickstarter, I felt this huge pressure, like, oh, I need to tell them what's going on. It's been 2 days. I need to, like, oh, this is going on and this is going on. Someone tell me, why did you say that? I don't know. I felt like I had to. Yeah, and so like it's and like yeah, that was a really weird pressure just to keep the pressure I never experienced before, to keep the communication going and keep that openness, because like again, that's something we never dealt with, that I've never dealt with in the in like the corporate structure, like even at Behavior, where yeah, it was a small studio, but it still was not an indie studio with that what we know now as that relationship between the indie developers and the audience. They didn't have that. So yeah, with Kickstarter it was my first time like really realizing what that meant, and I kind of went overboard on that one side, but I'm bringing it back, kind of like okay, no, I should be doing this and this, like okay, kind of get a better grasp of it. And yeah, so that was a weird new pressure for me. There still is that pressure to deliver on what we were promising, and I mean that has been all right because what we promised we already knew that was going to be the final game because we structured our production that way and we approached it intelligently and like everything we said in the Kickstarter is exactly what we were going to do, what we're planning to do. Everything's all the thinking is more or less done, and it's all about just executing on the promise. And I mean, it still is right now.
I have to obviously ask it because you obviously talk about the audience there. I mean, were you aiming for any particular audience with the game? Because just looking at the game, you're targeting so many different groups. It seems because obviously it's a JRPG, something we haven't seen a good one in quite a while. I think since back in the days of the original PlayStation with like Final Fantasy 7 and 8, I'd say was like the good one. We've had the occasional one or two with things such as Lost Odyssey.
Yeah.
You've also got elements there of tabletop gaming. You've got deck building. So it's like all of my favorite nerdy pastimes being like crammed into this one game, which is absolutely wonderful. But I had to obviously wonder, was when you were like setting out to make this game, was there any particular audience you were aiming for, or was it this idea of these are the elements we like, and the game will find its audience?
It definitely started out like that. That these are the elements we like, and it'll find its audience. But I still like I still kept an eye on, kept it in mind. It needs to have an audience. Like, can I accurately define and what that audience is? No, I wasn't really able to. I was more thinking along the lines of like, I like a lot of stuff. This seems like something I would like. Yeah, it should work out. Yeah, maybe. But as time has gone on, we've definitely been able, and as we've met more players, like when we take it to shows like PAX or DreamHack or other things, other local shows, we definitely ended up getting more of a sense of who our audience was, and like we knew it intuitively, we just didn't have it like verbalized. So yeah, as time has gone on, we ended up verbalizing it. This is a game for fans of the TRPG genre that is looking for stuff that's a bit new. That these elements that are new are very familiar with like Hearthstone really breaking CCGs into the mainstream video gaming audience. I mean, Magic was obviously already there, but like for the most part, Magic people knew of it. It wasn't familiar as a game to a lot of video gamers, but Hearthstone helped
Yeah.
break that barrier. Yeah, so that's kind of our target, but we're also designing and building everything in a way that like it's a lighter element to CCG. It still has gameplay experience and execution from the genre, but it still is light enough and just kind of basically is very approachable.
Okay.
And we're finding this with when we take it to shows, like people like see the tactical, they see the grid, and they're like, "Ooh, what's that?" And then they see the card and like, "Ooh, tell me more."
Yeah.
And things. So like, it definitely does seem to be working, and that fans of TRPGs are very willing to give the game a chance. I mean, maybe that helps that like the square grid is such a powerful image and for fans of the TRPG genre, and just the TRPG genre, never cards or dice. But that thing is so powerful, and the audience is so hungry for that for games in that genre, more games of that genre, that like I think they're also willing to overlook the cards and like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
let me in.
I mean, I have to confess, as soon as I saw like the square grid in there, I did get excited. But this is come from the mindset that playing Space Hulk, we all get excited the fact they had hexagonal squares instead of the normal square ones. So, and would you say, obviously, the fact that because you've produced a game which is combining so many different elements, that this is really a sign of gamers sort of maturing or evolving to the point now where we no longer have to have like one particular element. We can combine numerous elements that we would see from like tabletop gaming, card games, into video games now, and it still work within the realm of the video games.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, I do. But that's been going on, like genre hybridization, wow, has been going on for a long time now. Like one of the bigger standout was like Call of Duty 4, with like, all right, if you're a shooter fan and you only play shooters and you're playing Black Site Area 51, I don't think anyone plays that, but whatever. Like Unreal and Doom and things like that. You might not have ever really touched the RPG aspects of levels and progression, the concepts of experience points, and unlocking things. But that really helped, yeah, that helped break that barrier of like, yeah, genre of hybrid genres and everything, and where, and we're seeing it in so many other places that have been going on for years, like with EA Sports games, of having like collectible cards in them. And even nowadays we're seeing like EA Sports, like their NBA games, etc., and their FIFA games. The cards were definitely something outside of the main gameplay. Like it was just you make a team, you collect them, and such like that. But with like nowadays, like the imagery of cards is everywhere. Of like Titanfall and burn cards, you have like Plants vs Zombies Garden Warfare that had booster packs of stickers, which effectively look like cards. And then so like this whole like being accepting and getting all and seeing all these hybridized genres has been going on for quite a while now. And I mean, I guess it's like how TV evolved, that just things over time get more and more complex, and that complexity stops being complex and just the norm. Like how TVs, like way back, they didn't like a story arc. You never heard of that. That it was just, all right, an episode is one story. It starts and it ends. Never reference a previous one or anything. You only have one storyline, the A storyline, but then it started evolving of like, all right, this story takes place over 4 episodes, and while you have your main story going on, you have your second story that comes in and out, and like storytelling just got way more complex. Of like, yeah, now stories are referencing, like TV show episodes are, the story is referencing stuff from other TV shows or outside of the TV show, like politics or other elements of pop culture. And that, like, I forget the first, like I was reading about the first experiment in a TV show of having multiple storylines, like an A and a B storyline within a show. No one liked it. It was way too confusing. But that's the norm now. And not only that, we like look at what like 24 did of like the huge season-long arc, and then how it got further evolved with like Lost and now Game of Thrones, and, just all this stuff. You have like a billion different storylines going on, that and arcs that start and stop and like get picked up again later on. They reference all these other things, and like that's very much the way that games have been evolving. Like I'm sure that at one point Centipede was insanely complex, that people weren't like the gaming audience and what they were used to wasn't mature enough to see that as just like, okay, it is just a game where you move your guy around on the bottom and you shoot at a centipede that craps out mushrooms or whatever. But nowadays, like, we've gone beyond that. Our maturity level of what we're willing to accept as gamers and what we expect is way higher now than Centipede and Galaga and Super Mario Brothers or even Super Mario 3. And that was pretty complex back then. But now, like, no, everything needs to have an RPG system, like, yeah, friends lists and doobity-doo, and everything's crazy, and that's the norm. But yeah, like so yes, we have been maturing as gamers, but this has been just a steady increase in maturity level of like what we gamers would expect and what we accept and everything.
Yeah, I kind of like as I listen to you, I feel like it's just the society being so focused on being multitasking now that everybody is able to do that, and they appreciate when this it feels new when different concepts are meshed together. It's just like I know what an RPG is, but I'm not familiar. Like when I first saw Children of Zodiarcs, I got a little like scared because your colleague was talking to me and she was explaining to me the game, and then I was like, wow, that sounds like something that's way out of my league. I don't know anything about dice crafting. I don't know anything about card building, deck building, and it got so like overwhelming in a way. And she was like, no, just try it, and you'll catch on. And that's the thing is, the moment that I started playing it, it was it turned out that a lot of it actually just is very easy to grasp. And that's one of the things that I really, really liked about Children of Zodiarcs is that it may blend a lot of different genres together and different gaming styles, but you still manage to keep it pretty grounded in a way where I don't know if it's just because it's the demo for DreamHack when I was there or whatnot, but obviously a lot of people are feeling the same love because I still have to congratulate you in person for the 2 awards you won at the Indie Games Festival.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, that I mean that is the game. What you played is an accurate representation of the game, and like the and that is like the very funny and difficult marketing wise element of the game is that it does seem very complex. There are a lot of moving parts, and like when you get to a higher level of gameplay, a higher level of skill, it's important to you start to see the relationships between all the parts. But when you're just kind of starting out, what's cool is that it's actually a very simple game that you can play it in a very simple manner because like while there are many things to the game, they don't they don't really happen they don't really happen in parallel. They're in sequence. So you're only thinking about this right now. Then you're only thinking about this. Then you're only thinking about this and this and this. So yeah, that's why it is like that's one of the kind of it wasn't intentional. It just kind of ended up that way, which is awesome because like the game would be way too complex then, and it would really screw us over. But yeah, like it is actually when you play it, it's a very simple game to grasp. Just that being understanding like the deeper relationships and understanding how to be good at the game. That's where it is challenging, and I mean that's great because like it means that whole thing of Edelhedum. I mean I learned that in school of the easy to learn, hard to master. Well, we're not easy to learn. We still our difficulty curve definitely doesn't start at 0, but it doesn't start at 100. Like it does start at like about 20-ish on a 100-point scale. So yeah, it allows players to kind of ramp up, learn each piece bit by bit, and figure the game out and enjoy it and play it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess what another point I really wanted to point out was that, you were talking about how it's supposed to replicate board games, and you can really feel that with what I enjoyed was the dice throwing mechanics. Like you can actually hold onto the dice and throw it, and it's like you're tossing it onto a board. And that sort of feeling makes such an authentic feeling to the game of just the concept you're trying to build out of it.
hmm Yeah, and that was. I mean, I think I harp on this more. Like maybe it's not so important like to the ultimate experience because like maybe it'd be better if we cut it and just had the dice appear and then you check the reroll and etc. But I do this aspect of shaking and throwing the dice is something I really like from day one. I wanted to like really have in the game because shaking a lot of dice is fun, like rolling like 8 dice at once and like shaking them in your hand and chucking them on the table. It's a lot of fun, and like I wanted to, just I wanted to have that. I wanted to have that sound of the dice shaking around and hitting all the surfaces. But also, it gives you as a player like a real sense of involvement in what's going on. That you know, uh, that whatever happens to the dice happens because of you. That in the game we never and, people have suggested it before of like, what if when you roll the dice they land and then they rearrange so you can read them. And I specifically didn't want that because then it feels like the game is involving itself in the dice roll and that it's not you doing it. So that's been something that I've kept fighting off. I mean, I think the team's accepted that now, but that's something I kept fighting off to make sure we don't do because I wanted you to feel like this was your role. You shook it around and you threw them at the angle, whatever that you wanted, and also that another reason why I wanted this. I don't know if either of you play a lot of board games or like D&D or whatnot, but but you find, and everyone has this, you get a kind of a ritual with rolling and throwing dice, like about not letting any of them fall off the table. Like, oh, it fell off the table, doesn't count,
Yeah.
and that type of thing, or like releasing them one by one, throwing them so they land, like that the ones when you throw them, the ones that stay on your player's manual, they're luckier than the others, even though that makes absolutely no sense logically. But we just put so much superstition and ritual into things like luck that I wanted the players to be able to express that and get that attachment to the dice that they throw. And so that's another reason why like I've stuck so hard to the actual dice roll the way it is.
I have to
Yeah, I
say,
mean,
sorry,
yeah.
I was just about to just say, really, I do appreciate the dice rolling mechanic. So I appreciate you fighting for that, just for my own self, because I know in dice, whenever I see dice rolling games and things such as Blood Bowl 2, even though I know the computer is generating the roll, the fact I see the dice roll, it gives me a sense that yes, this is all chance and fate. Is not the computer working against me.
Yeah.
Straight, unless it gives me a roll I don't want, and then in which case the computer is definitely working against me. But there's something psychological about seeing dice rolls rather than just being given the figures. And I like, as you said, the fact that the dice stay where they are, same as if you were rolling them in real life. I think it's a nice touch. The fact it doesn't tidy it up, that you can see it how they fall. And so certainly from my own personal perspective, I do appreciate you fighting for us dice rolling fanatics out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a feeling of anticipation for sure. And I mean, talking about anticipation, you were talking about the game that it's going to be slated now for early 2017. Do you have a specific month you're aiming for right now, or?
Not so much right now. We're giving the basically right now the vague spring because that's the kind of the window that we've narrowed it down to. But we haven't really narrowed it down, been able to narrow it down to a specific date yet. But we're hoping, basically, we're aiming for spring.
Cool. And I have to obviously ask, I mean, obviously at the moment you are obviously working on getting your first game out, but going forward for Cardboard Utopia, what is the plans really for the company going forward? Is it to stay producing games similar to this, or do you have plans to obviously branch out into other areas?
The idea is to branch out in different areas. Like that probably works against us from a marketing point of view because it's harder for gamers to identify us. Like, oh, you're the pixel art platformer guys, or you're the first-person shooter puzzle guys, whichever. But this studio was started and of pursuing making games, following like while pursuing what we love and what we want to make and what we want to play. And we're all of us we're fans of so many different games and different genres that yeah, we don't really want to stick within something. Like if there's something we really want to do, like I mean, fingers crossed, Children of Zodiarcs does well enough that maybe we can. I would like to make a sequel, just because like there's a lot of stuff from a long time ago, like years ago, that I would have liked to have done that just didn't match this game. It didn't fit in with what we were doing. But yeah, like I mean, no promises. I have no idea whether it's going to be. We'll see if it happens. Essentially, my answer is yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, no, I don't feel like uh, I definitely don't want us to get constrained to a single genre, a single game type, a single aesthetic. But I still want us to, but still have the freedom to do that if we want. So yeah, I guess we just need to make sure we never have a pattern of like, one's a point, two's just, it's not a pattern yet, but three is a pattern. So maybe for third one, we just do something entirely different to make sure we don't get typecasted.
Yeah.
So, Jason, if we were to find Cardboard Utopia and Children of Zodiarcs, where would be the best to find it?
Well, a few places. Well, we have a very active, well, for us at least, we have a pretty active Twitter account, like at Cardboard Utopia, one word. We also have our Facebook page, facebook.com/Cardboard Utopia, one word. And then we also the game. We already have a coming soon page up for Children of Zodiarcs on Steam right now, so you can do a search for the game. And it's Children of Zodiarcs, not Zodiacs.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta stick that weird R in it. And yeah, where people can go, go on the forums, ask questions for us, or you can wish list the game, and people will be notified when the game launches. And I guess lastly, we have our webpage of cardboard-utopia.com.
Okay, as always, all this information is going to be in the description below. So this wraps up our episode. Thank you so much to Jason for joining us in this chat.
No problem. Thank you.
We wish you the best in the game and the progress, and we look forward to its release. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read more game reviews. To get gaming news and releases every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. To listen to us on the go, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Podomatic, and recently on Satchel. Links will all be in the description below. So see you in the next episode. Bye.